Now let's go back to the Honorable Mahama Ayariga MP for Bawku Central. Honorable, I hope this time you would be able to hear me. The question is, the Supreme Court's directive is clear, isn't it? Expunge the name. Expunge would simply mean remove the name, correct? But I've heard a debate and then a summary from the speaker and almost like a request to the Supreme Court to explain what expunge means. Is it the word expunge that the Parliament has a problem with, or the consequence of the expunging?
From what I understand the speaker to be saying, when you say that something should be expunged, it has a number of implications, one of which is to make an assumption that the thing never existed. That is why they are saying expunge. They could have just said, the member of parliament, James is no longer a member of parliament, and therefore parliament should take the necessary steps to declare the seat vacant. But then they said expunge his name. So speaker is asking, what does expunge really mean? Is it to say that he's never really been a member of this house? Does that affect the legitimacy of everything that has happened in this house in which he has been involved in? Should his name never be captured in the Hansard for days that he contributed in debates and etc.? For him, he thinks that the Supreme Court should give greater clarity to why they use the expression expunge his name instead of just using a different form of expression of what they want done. That is why he directed that some further clarification is sought from the Supreme Court on what they actually meant by that expression.
I see. When the Supreme Court makes a judgment, that judgment becomes a new law. But we also know that laws do not take retrospective effect. Does the same not apply in this instance so that you can just move forward from where things ended?
Well, I mean, that was what I argued today in Parliament. I said I think that the Supreme Court just wants his name taken out as a member of Parliament, and that should be it. It should be a forward-looking directive, not to go back in time and try to expunge every record of him in the records of Parliament. That is the Hansard, appendix, everything that he has participated in. I didn't think that is what the Supreme Court is saying, but the Speaker said he wanted to be sure of what the Supreme Court is saying, so he's going to ask them for some clarification.
Now, when you say you're going to ask for clarification, it means the House will write a letter to the Supreme Court or send a petition, or what form? Because the Speaker mentioned that he had mentioned to some members of the Supreme Court already, but I believe this is going to be a formal thing. So how would a formal request be made?
Well, let me say that when he says he has spoken to some members of the Supreme Court, I think that would be an unofficial deliberation. So we cannot have regard to that in terms of official reckoning. That's between him and them. I think that if he wants clarification, then Parliament, because the directive is to Parliament, I even had an issue with the use of the word Parliament should. So because he wants to find out who is Parliament. Is it all the MPs? Is it the Speaker? Is it the Clerk of Parliament? We thought they should be specific.
But I thought Parliament is an institution headed by an individual, the head of the Parliamentary Service Board, the head of the House of Parliament, the Speaker. Is that person not the face of Parliament? So that, for instance, if this directive was to the Ministry of Finance, the minister maybe would be the lead. And if it was to the government attorney general based on legal matters, if it's to a company, the managing director or the CEO is the face of the company. Does the same thing not happen where Parliament is a legal institution? If it is sued or suing, is it not through the Speaker's name who is the face of the House, or that's wrong?
I would have thought as much, that when a directive is given to Parliament, that the Speaker will look through the rules of the House and then decide how that directive is to be executed and further give direction as to how that should be done. If the rules don't even make provision under standing orders, I think too, he as Speaker has the discretion to devise a mechanism for getting that issue resolved based on some directive that he could give. So I'd have thought that that resolved the issue, but again, he raised those issues and he insisted that he wants to seek clarification from the Supreme Court. I thought during the debate that there's sufficient clarity. I mean, the issue is about whether or not he's eligible. I mean, there are many instances where people were subsequently declared ineligible to be members of parliament. And I would think that it will not affect proceedings and decisions that have been taken. If you look at the Constitution, I see that there's a provision relating to people who know that they are not qualified to sit and vote, but who sit and vote and participate in proceedings of parliament. That's an offense and punishable under the law. But then it falls short of saying that because they are not eligible and yet they participated in the proceedings or the vote or the decision, that decision is null and void. So I took a position on the floor today that yes, the Supreme Court has said we should take his name out. So it just involves taking his name out, but it doesn't affect everything that has happened in the House since he joined the House on January 8, 2021. So that's my position on the matter. But the Speaker has a different view of it. And so he's given directives based on his view of the matter.
I see. Now, it's a bit interesting, but we always hear you say Parliament is a master of its own rules, and we also know the issue of separation of powers. Now that you're running to the Supreme Court to guide you on your own internal rules, does it mean you are no more master of your rules?
This is not about our rules. This is about the Supreme Court giving a directive using expression that the Supreme Court has coined. So we're asking the Supreme Court to explain their directive. It has nothing to do with our rules. We didn't make rules saying that if XYZ situation arises, you expunge the name of that member from Parliament. They coined the term. And so because it is not a term that we are familiar with in our rules, in the Constitution, our standard orders, or any other legislation relating to Parliament, we reserve a right to ask them for clarification.
So the way forward, is that the way forward? Has the House generally agreed that that's what you're going to do? You write to the Supreme Court asking for that interpretation or direction to come, and until then, he remains on your record. Is that what it means?
If we assume that a directive given by the Speaker is the position of the House, I would say yes, because the Speaker has directed that the Supreme Court be written to explain what they meant by we should expunge his name from the record.
But this does not mean that his election has not been nullified. That is parallel to what you are asking for explanation to, correct?
I think the Supreme Court is clear about the nullification of his election. It's the consequential order that they have given that is the subject of some misunderstanding by the Speaker. So the issue of the nullification of his election is not what we are discussing here. It is when you say we should expunge his name from Parliament, the Speaker is asking, does it mean that we should expunge his name in such a way that it will appear that he never came to Parliament? Or are you saying that henceforth we should expunge his name from Parliament so that he will cease to be a member of the House from the time when the decision was handed down by the Supreme Court? That is where the Speaker has an issue. Are you saying we should expunge his name in a manner that will reflect what you are saying, that he's never been elected or properly elected, and therefore he wasn't eligible to be a member of Parliament, and therefore whatever he came and stayed here and did should not be captured? Those are the issues that the Speaker is asking. Because of the peculiar use of the word expunge, because it's not something we are familiar with in our Constitution and also in our standing orders.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
My pleasure.
That's Honorable Mahama Ayariga. He's Member of Parliament for Bawku Central and is also a lawyer.